Hello everyone, welcome to the Basic Arabic Grammar course. Let's start by defining our goal from the course. So our goal is to start learning Arabic in a fun and efficient way. Our focus in this course is to learn the grammar of modern standard Arabic. This is important to stress because we are just learning the grammar. We're not learning the vocabulary or the phonetics or the conversation or anything. And we are focusing on modern standard Arabic, not any of the dialects that are widely spoken in the Arab world. The method that we will be using here is the Champolu method, which is a method that uses colors and contrast to show the grammatical facts. For example, if we see two sentences here like the boy who sings and the girl who sings, then you'll be able to see the contrast between the two sentences and see how we use the relative pronouns here, which we'll be discussing later in the course, and how we'll be also able to see the matching between each word in the vocabulary and its equivalent. So al-walad is the boy, and al-bint is the girl, and yughanni sings, and also tughanni sings, but you know that yughanni here is for the male and tughanni for the female. And then the relative pronoun is different. So for the boy it's alladhi, for the girl it's allati. This is just one example of how we are going to use this method in the course. So the topics that we'll be covering will be divided into two sections. Section 1 is for nouns and noun phrases and related grammar. So we start by learning how to use definite and indefinite nouns like a boy and the boy, and then adjectives with verb to be like the boy is smart and so forth. And then we look into personal pronouns like I am hungry, they are from Germany, and things like that. And then demonstratives like this is a boy, this book, and things like that. And then we go to possessive pronouns like my book, her car, and so forth. And then we go to genitive expressions, things like the manager's book or the teacher's car, and so on. And then we go to prepositions like on the table, in the bag, and so on. In section 2, we're covering verbs and more advanced topics. So we have topics such as verb have, like I have a car, they have a cat. And then we also cover a very brief introduction to verbs because it's a very extensive topic. And then we look into subjects and objects and object pronouns like he told me, I saw her, and so on. And then we go to relative pronouns, things like the boy who sings, the man who walks, and so on. And then we look into question words, how to make simple questions in Arabic, like what is this, where are they, when did they come, and so on. And then we look into negation, seeing how to negate a sentence like I didn't go, he doesn't work here, and so on. And then we look into coordination, which is how to put two elements together, including any of these, like two nouns, two verbs, two adjectives, two sentences, and so on. Like the boy and the girl, the man or the woman, and so on. So the outcomes that we expect from this course is to learn these grammatical topics with their corresponding grammatical or grammar words and be able to build and understand simple sentences and to be able to understand sentence structure in Arabic. Let's get started. Today we'll be talking about definite articles in Arabic, which is just the prefix alif lam or al. So when we have the word for dog, when we say a dog, it is kalb, kalb. But when we want to say the dog, it is al-kalb, al-kalb. And it goes for other words as well. For example, the word cat is qitta, a cat, qitta. And if you want to make it the cat, it will be al-qitta, al-qitta. And same for the word boy, which is walad. A boy is walad, and the boy is al-walad. Al-walad. And for the word girl, which is bint, bint, and the girl is al-bint. And for the word woman, it is imra'a, imra'a. And here there's a little bit of exception because we do not say al-imra'a, but we say al-mar'a, al-mar'a. So it's just one of the very few exceptions to this by changing the word when you have alif lam before it. And there's also some important rule that is associated with alif lam when the word starts with certain letters. For example, here the word rajul, rajul, which means a man, when we say the man, it should be al-rajul, but due to some phonological rule in Arabic, al-rajul becomes ar-rajul. So it's still alif lam in writing, but when we're saying it, the sound lam disappears and it becomes double of the first letter of the word. So it becomes ar-rajul. And this phenomena is known as sun letters and moon letters. And you can have like a list of all of these letters here, and it's something to memorize mainly, and you can find more material on it on our platform. Thank you. As we've discussed yesterday, we know that Arabic has definite articles. So when you have a word like a dog, it is kalb, and when you add the definite article to it, it becomes al-kalb, the dog. And this will be important while we're discussing adjectives. Because when we have a phrase like a big dog, it is kalb kabir, kalb kabir, a big dog. But when you want to say the big dog, it becomes al-kalb al-kabir, al-kalb al-kabir, the big dog. And you see that now the alif lam is added both to the noun and to the adjective, which is very important. Let's take another example here for the word book. So when we have when we want to say a book, it becomes kitab, kitab. While we say the book, it is al-kitab, al-kitab. And we want to say kitab, when we want to say a new book, it becomes kitab jadid, kitab jadid. And we want to say the new book, it becomes al-kitab al-jadid, al-kitab al-jadid. You should also pay attention to the fact that in Arabic, when you are attaching an adjective to a noun, you need to pay attention to the gender of that noun, because if it's male, it needs to have the adjective also needs to be male. If the noun is female, then the adjective has to be female. For example, when we want to say a new house, and house in Arabic is a male noun, so we say Bayt Jadid, Bayt Jadid, a new house. But when you want to say a new car, it becomes سيارة جديدة, سيارة جديدة. And notice that we have ta marbuta here to indicate the feminine, and it is added at the end of the adjective. And now we move to something very important, which is when we want to say something is something. So we want to say, for example, the house is new. Notice that it is very similar to when we say a new house, but the structure is different. So when we want to say a new house, it is Bayt Jadid, Bayt Jadid. So Bayt is indefinite and Jadid is indefinite. But when we want to say the house is new, so we say Al-Bayt Jadid, Al-Bayt Jadid. So the house here is definite as it has alif lam before it, and jadid is indefinite because it doesn't have alif lam. So al-bayt jadid means the house is new. And the same situation here. When we want to say a new car, it is sayyara jadida, as we've seen last slide. But when you want to say the car is new, then becomes as-sayyara jadida. As-sayyara jadida. So as-sayyara is the car, and jadida is the adjective, and as-sayyara here it is with a definite article, alif lam, but jadida is indefinite. So that's how we express that this car is new. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. For personal pronouns, we find that we have few categories for the pronouns. So we find a category for first person, like I and we, and then for second person, which is in English just you, and for third person, which is he and she and it and they. And you can also split it among singular, like I and he and she, and you singular, and dual for two people, and for plural for three people or more. So let's read them all. So for I, أنا, أنا. For we, نحن, نحن. And for you, addressing a female, is أنتِ, أنتِ. For you, addressing a male, it is أنت, أنت. When you're addressing two people, it is أنتما, أنتما. When you're addressing a group of females, it is أنتن, أنتن. When you're addressing a group of people, mixed males and females, or just males, it is أنتم, أنتم. And when we want to say she, it is هي, هي. And for he, it is هو, هو. And for they, when we talk about two people, it is هما, هما. When you talk about a group of females, it is هن, هن. When you talk about a group of people, whether mixed or just males, it is هم, هم. Let's take some examples. So for the word أنا, for the pronoun أنا, I can use these examples. I say أنا لبناني, أنا لبناني. I am Lebanese. Or أنا طبيب, أنا طبيب. I am a doctor. Or أنا سعيد, أنا سعيد. I am happy. Notice that all of these if the speaker is a male, but if the speaker is female, then we find things can change. So for example, if the speaker is female and she wants to say that she is Egyptian, then she would say أنا مصرية, أنا مصرية. So we find the indicator of a female on the adjective here, the تاء مربوطة. And same for when she wants to say she is a doctor. أنا طبيبة, أنا طبيبة. I am a doctor. And when she wants to say she is happy, أنا سعيدة, أنا سعيدة. I am happy. And then let's look into the pronoun نحن, which means we, and it goes like this. When we want to say it like that, you need to make sure that the adjective also, or whatever that we are referring to, is also plural. So when we say نحن تونسيون, we are Tunisians, but the word Tunisian here is plural. نحن تونسيون. Or نحن مدرسون, نحن مدرسون. We are teachers. And notice that the word teachers here is the plural. Or نحن مسرورون, نحن مسرورون. And here this is the plural form for the adjective مسرور, which means pleased. we have a similar situation also when we're talking about a group of females, when they are talking about themselves, and when they want to say, for example, they are Moroccan. نحن مغربيات. نحن مغربيات. We are Moroccan females. Or نحن مدرسات. نحن مدرسات. We are teachers, female teachers. Or نحن مسرورات. نحن مسرورات. We are pleased, and the female form and the plural form of it. Now when you want to use the singular you, so it's for male it is أنت, for female it's أنتِ. So when you want to say to someone like a male person, you are handsome, it is أنت وسيم. أنت وسيم, you are handsome. And you want to tell him that he is generous, you say أنت كريم. أنت كريم, you are generous. If you're talking to a female and you want to tell her she is beautiful, you say أنتِ جميلة. أنتِ جميلة, you are beautiful. Or you want to tell her that she is generous, you say أنتِ كريمة. أنتِ كريمة, you are generous. And when you're addressing a group of people, notice that there is a difference between dual and plural. So if you're addressing two people and want to tell them that they are strong, you say أنتما قويان. أنتما قويان. When you're addressing two male people, when addressing two females, say أنتما قويتان. أنتما قويتان. Notice that we're using the same أنتما for both males and females, but the difference here is the adjective, which in the first one it is for the dual male, and for the second it's dual female. And when you want to address a group of people, both males and females or just males, and tell them that they are smart, say أنتم أذكياء. أنتم أذكياء, you are smart. When you're addressing a group of females, you want to tell them that they are smart, you tell them أنتن ذكيات. أنتن ذكيات, you are smart. And now when we're talking about third person singular, so for he or she, so it's هو for he and هي for she. So we want to say he is strong, هو قوي. هو قوي. And for her, it will be she is strong, هي قوية. هي قوية. I want to say he is handsome, هو وسيم. هو وسيم. And I want to say she is beautiful, هي جميلة. هي جميلة, she is beautiful. And now when we're talking about third person plural or dual, you can find the word هما for dual and هم and hun for plural. So when we want to say about two people, two male people, that they are smart, you say هما ذكيان. هما ذكيان. And for two female people, it is هما ذكيتان. هما ذكيتان. You notice that we're using both هما for both males and females. The only difference is the adjective. And when you want to say about a group of males or mixed group that they are strong, say هم أقوياء. هم أقوياء. And when you're talking about a group of females, is هن قويات. هن قويات. They are strong. So this is it for today. Thank you so much and see you next time. Demonstratives are words like this and that and these and those, which are used to refer or to point to things. So in Arabic we have 5 of these. The first one is هذا. هذا, which it means this when you're referring to a masculine singular. And هذه. هذه, which also means this, but when you're referring to a feminine. And هذان. هذان, which means these two. masculine, and هاتان, هاتان, which means also these two, but for feminine, and then هؤلاء, هؤلاء, which means these plural, both mixed male or female. So let's take some examples. So for the question ما هذا, ما هذا, which means what is this, we can answer this by saying هذا كلب, هذا كلب, this is a dog. And notice that the word dog is masculine here. And also we can say هذا مبنى, هذا مبنى, this is a building, and also building is masculine. But when we're referring to something that is feminine, something like a cat here, we say هذه قطة, هذه قطة, this is a cat, and using هذه because it's feminine. Or هذه سيارة, هذه سيارة, this is a car, and this is also feminine. And we can have more examples, something like هذا كتاب, هذا كتاب, this is a book. And then we can notice that when we're using the difference between definite and indefinite, because when we say هذا كتاب, we're saying this is a book. But when we're saying هذا الكتاب, we're saying it means that this book. So هذا كتاب means this is a book, and هذا الكتاب means this book. Or we can say something like هذا كتاب مفيد, هذا كتاب مفيد, this is a useful book. Or we can say هذا الكتاب مفيد, and in this case it would be this book is useful. So we're talking about this book and we're saying it is useful. And we can say هذا الكتاب المفيد, so this is a whole phrase saying this useful book, and this can be like a subject of another sentence, like هذا الكتاب المفيد is something. And this is what we can see here, because we can say that هذا الكتاب المفيد قديم, so this useful book is old. So you see that you can start with a very simple two-word sentence, and then using this information about demonstratives, you can start to build more complex phrases and sentences. And same for the feminine. So we can have something like هذه حديقة, هذه حديقة, this is a garden. Or هذه الحديقة, هذه الحديقة, this garden. You can say هذه حديقة جميلة, هذه حديقة جميلة, this is a beautiful garden. Or we can say هذه الحديقة جميلة, this garden is beautiful. Always pay attention to the structure and the order of words and what is indefinite and what is definite to see the structure that is shown here. And you can say something like هذه الحديقة الجميلة, هذه الحديقة الجميلة, this beautiful garden. We can also put this beautiful garden as the subject of a sentence, so we can say something like هذه الحديقة الجميلة قريبة, this beautiful garden is nearby. And we can also use the demonstratives to refer to people, so we can ask the question من هذا, من هذا, who is this? So we can answer this by saying هذا أبي, هذا أبي, this is my father. Or هذا أخي, هذا أخي, this is my brother. Or هذا صديقي, هذا صديقي, this is my friend. Or هذا ابني, هذا ابني, this is my son. Or we can do it for females, So we can say من هذه من هذه, who is this? Let's say هذه أمي هذه أمي, this is my mother. Or هذه أختي هذه أختي, this is my sister. Or هذه صديقتي هذه صديقتي, this is my friend. Or هذه ابنتي هذه ابنتي, this is my daughter. And when we're talking about spouses, a man can say هذه زوجتي هذه زوجتي, this is my wife. And a wife can say هذا زوجي هذا زوجي, this is my husband. And when we're talking about duals, we can say هذان ولدان هذان ولدان, these two are two boys. Or هذان الولدان, as we remember from a few slides ago, like when we say هذان الولدان, and الولدان here is definite, so it becomes these boys, these two boys. And then you can use it in a sentence so that it will be something like هذان الولدان كريمان, these two boys are generous. And you can do the same for girls or for females, saying like هاتان بنتان, these two are girls. Or هاتان البنتان, so these two girls. And then you can put it in a sentence هاتان البنتان كريمتان, these two girls are generous. And you can also notice that هاتان can have a different formulation depending on which part of the sentence it is, if it is subject or if it is object. So if it is subject, saying like هاتان البنتان, these two girls تعملان, are working. So هاتان البنتان تعملان. And if they are in the object position, say قابلت هاتين البنتين قابلت هاتين البنتين, I met these two girls. So now they're in object position, so we use هاتين, but in the subject position we use هاتان. And same for هذان, for the dual male, هذان الولدان يمشيان هذان الولدان يمشيان, these two boys are walking. But we're in the object position, ساعدت هذين الولدين, I helped these two boys. ساعدت هذين الولدين. So moving on to the plurals, we can ask a question such as this: من هؤلاء? من هؤلاء? Who are these? And we can answer something like هؤلاء مدرسون هؤلاء مدرسون, these are teachers. Or we can say هؤلاء المدرسون. So now it is a phrase showing that these teachers, and we can add it to something like these teachers are something. And in this case we can say هؤلاء المدرسون ممتازون هؤلاء المدرسون ممتازون, these teachers are excellent. And also pay attention to what is definite and what's indefinite. And the same goes for female, and say هؤلاء مدرسات هؤلاء مدرسات, these are teachers, female teachers. Or هؤلاء المدرسات, these female teachers. And we can say something like هؤلاء المدرسات ممتازات هؤلاء المدرسات ممتازات, these female teachers are excellent. And notice that there are few other demonstratives, the same logic that we have in English for this, for pointing to something near, and that to something far. In Arabic we also use هذا for something that is near, and ذلك for something that is far, and we use هذه for something that is near, and تلك for something far. And for the plural we use أولئك for something that is far. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Possessive pronouns are not actual words, but rather they are suffixes. They are added after nouns to indicate that these nouns belong to someone. So, for example, for the noun bait, which means house, if I want to say my house, it becomes bayti, bait-i. So the e part here is the suffix that corresponds to my in English. So my house is bayti, bayti. And we have different suffixes similar to what we have seen in personal pronouns. So we have for first person and second person and third person, and for plural and singular and dual, and for male and female. So when we want to say my, like first person, say it becomes e, like bayti, bayti. And for our, say our house, it's baytuna, baytuna. And for second person, when you're addressing a female, you say baytuki, baytuki. So the key suffix here is your for addressing a singular female, and baytuka, baytuka. And ka here is the your part for singular male. When you're addressing two people, say baytukuma, baytukuma. So kuma here is your for dual, and addressing a group of females, baytukunna, baytukunna. And for addressing a group of males or mixed, baytukum, baytukum. And when you're talking about third person, about her, about a female person, you say baytuha, baytuha, her house. And we're talking about a male person, baytuh, baytuh, his house. And we're talking about third person for dual, baytuhuma, baytuhuma, their house. And for a group of females, baytuhunna, baytuhunna, their house. And for a group of males or mixed, baytuhum, baytuhum. And now we can see some examples here. Again, for the word bayt, we can say something like, my house is here, bayti huna, bayti huna. Or our house is there, baytuna hunek, baytuna hunek. And you can make sentences like, your house is beautiful. When you're addressing two people, say baytukuma jamil, baytukuma jamil. Your house is beautiful. And you're addressing a group of males or mixed, say baytukum kabir, baytukum kabir. Your house is big. And when addressing a group of females and saying your house is small, say baytukunna صغير, baytukunna صغير. Your house is small. And when you're talking about third person, say like their house is simple, two people, you say بيتهما بسيط, بيتهما بسيط. And we talk about a group of people, say بيتهم بعيد, بيتهم بعيد. Their house is far. And we're talking about a group of females, saying their house is near, بيتهن قريب, بيتهن قريب. Their house is near. And notice something, that for some nouns in Arabic, when they have this, what is known as ta' marbuta at the end of it, and when you try to add a suffix after it, like these possessive pronouns, you need to make it, instead of ha sound, it becomes ta. So when you talk about a noun like madrasa, madrasa, like school, which ends with this ha sound, and when you want to say my school, it becomes something like madrasati, madrasati. So the h sound becomes t sound. Madrasati kabira. Madrasati kabira. My school is big. And same when you want to say our. So our school is madrasatuna. Madrasatuna. So we say our school is small. madrasatuna صغيرة. madrasatuna صغيرة. And you also need to pay attention to what sound comes after the actual word. For example, the actual word is bait, but we say baytuna. So the u sound that comes after bait and before na is actually comes from the grammar of the word, because if the word is subject or in the initial position of the sentence, it has the u sound at the end. So it's baytuna, baytuna, baytuna هناك. Our house is there. But if the word is an object or a direct object, so when we say like we bought our house, we say اشترينا بيتنا. اشترينا بيتنا. So we bought our house. So in this case, our house is the object. So it has بيت, بيت, and then بيتنا. And then when we are using it like in an indirect object or after a preposition, it becomes something like عدنا إلى بيتنا. عدنا إلى بيتنا. So it's بيتي. So the sound that comes after the word is E. بيتنا. And this is because it comes after a preposition here. So عدنا إلى بيتنا. So this is one of the very basic parts of Arabic grammar that we need to know. And many of the words, when you see them, you'll find that it has these markers at the end of it just to indicate their grammatical position in the sentence. So that's it for today. Thank you so much and see you next time. Genitive is an expression which means something belongs to something. So let's see an example here. For example, we want to say the judge's house or the house of the judge. So in this case, we know the word bait means house and the word qadi means judge. So we add these two words together. Bait here is an indefinite word and al-qadi here is a definite word because it has alif lam as we've seen before. So bait al-qadi means the house of the judge or the judge's house. And this expression in Arabic is called mudaf and mudaf ilayh. So the first one is mudaf, so bait here is mudaf, and al-mudaf ilayh is al-qadi, which is what the thing belongs to. Let's see another example here. For example, we want to say the dog's tail or the tail of the dog. So it is ذيل الكلب. ذيل الكلب. So it's the tail, which is ذيل, of the dog, which is الكلب. And again, we see the idea of the first word is indefinite and the second word is definite. And another example here. I want to say the manager of the company. We say مدير الشركة. مدير الشركة. So مدير is manager and شركة is company. So مدير الشركة is the manager of the company. Again, we notice the first one is indefinite and the second one is definite. And another example here. عنوان الكتاب, the title of the book. So عنوان is title and الكتاب is the book. So the title of the book is عنوان الكتاب. Another example here, we want to say phone number or the number of the phone. So in this case, it becomes رقم الهاتف. رقم الهاتف. رقم is the number and الهاتف is the phone. And if you want to say olive oil, it is زيت زيتون. زيت زيتون. So زيت here means oil and زيتون means olive. So olive oil is زيت زيتون. And I want to say baby oil, it is زيت أطفال. زيت أطفال. So زيت again is oil, and أطفال means babies. So it's the oil for the babies. That's it for today. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Hello everyone, let's talk about prepositions in Arabic. We are going to talk about a number of prepositions and see the corresponding prepositions in English. For example, we have the preposition for in or at, which is fi, fi, and then the preposition for on, which is ala, ala, and the preposition for from, which is min, min, and the preposition to, which is ila, ila, and the preposition about, an, an, and the preposition with, meaning with a person, it is ma, ma, and then the preposition with also, but when we're talking about with an object, like I am playing with a toy, it is be, be, and then the preposition to or for, which is li, li. And then let's take some examples. For example, we can say something like to the airport, إلى المطار, إلى المطار, and something like on the floor or on earth, على الأرض, على الأرض, and then something like from home, which is من البيت, من البيت, and something about the problem, عن المشكلة, عن المشكلة, and then we say something like in the garden, في الحديقة, في الحديقة, and then something like for your safety, لسلامتكم, لسلامتكم, and then something like with my friend, مع صديقي, مع صديقي, and then something like with the pen, it is بالقلم, بالقلم. Let's take some examples for using the preposition min, which means from. So a very common question is, where are you from? Addressing a male person. So in this case, we say من أين أنت, من أين أنت. So min here is from, and أين is the question word, which we'll be discussing later. And then أنت, which means you, male. So where are you from? من أين أنت? And then we can respond with something like I am from India. أنا من الهند. أنا من الهند. So أنا means I, min means from, الهند means India. So this is how we use min in the answer. And then we can also ask something like a same question but addressing a group of people. So it will be, where are you from? So من أين أنتم? من أين أنتم? So we also start the question with the word from, min, and then the question word أين, and then أنتم, which means you, plural. And the answer can be something like, we are from Nigeria. نحن من Nigeria. نحن من Nigeria. And then we can also use the word min for some expressions, very important expressions such as please, which is min fadlik, min fadlik, which would literally translate something like from out of your generosity or from your generosity or something like this. Or we can use it for some expressions like from the beginning, which is min al-bidayah, min al-bidayah. And then we talk about some examples for the word ila, which means to. So we can also use it for questions, something like, where do you travel in summer? Where do you travel in summer? So it becomes إلى أين تسافر في الصيف؟ إلى أين تسافر في الصيف? So we have seen أين in the previous slide, and then we know that إلى means to, so إلى أين, so it's to where. تسافر means to travel, and في is in, which is another word that we're going to discuss, and الصيف means in summer. So إلى أين تسافر في الصيف? To where do you travel in summer? And then the answer can be أنا أسافر إلى لبنان. أنا أسافر إلى لبنان. I travel to Lebanon. So أنا is I, أسافر means travel, إلى to, and Lebanon is Lebanon. And then we can also use the word إلى for certain idiomatic expressions. Something like when we want to say goodbye, it's إلى اللقاء. إلى اللقاء. So literally it would be something like to or towards the meeting again, or something like that. Or something like to or till the end. إلى النهاية. إلى النهاية. And we can also use it for expressions such as from A to Z, but in this case it would be من الألف إلى الياء. من الألف إلى الياء. So from min is from, alif is the first letter of the Arabic alphabet, إلى, which means to, الياء is the last letter of the Arabic alphabet. And then we can see the examples for the preposition على. على. So it can be a simple expression like on the chair. على الكرسي. على الكرسي. Or on the table. على المائدة. على المائدة. And we can also use it for idiomatic expressions as well. So when we want to say anyway, it becomes على أي حال. على أي حال. Or we want to say at least, على الأقل. على الأقل. And then for the preposition في, which means in or at, we can use it for countries or place names. So something like in Egypt, it's في مصر. في مصر. Or in Morocco, في المغرب. في المغرب. And then we can also use it for expressions with time. So we can say something in summer, في الصيف. في الصيف. And then we can say it for also in month, like in October, it's في أكتوبر. في أكتوبر. Notice that there are different month names in different Arab countries. And then for the preposition with, مع, مع, which is mainly used with people, so it's something like, I want to say, I live with my family. أنا أعيش مع أسرتي. أنا أعيش مع أسرتي. So أسرتي here is my family, and when I want to say something like with my family, it becomes مع أسرتي. And then I want to say I traveled with my friends. So سافرت مع أصدقائي. سافرت مع أصدقائي. So again, أصدقائي here means my friends, and when I want to say with my friends, it becomes مع أصدقائي. And this also comes with idiomatic expressions such as goodbye also, which is مع السلامة. مع السلامة, or مع السلامة, which literally means with safety. Or something that comes at the end of formal messages, which is مع تحياتي. مع تحياتي, which means best regards, or with literally with my greetings. And then for the preposition عن, which means about, we can find it in an example like this. So I read a book about science. So it's قرأت كتابا عن العلوم. قرأت كتابا عن العلوم. And then we can say something like, the manager spoke about the problem. تكلم المدير عن المشكلة. تكلم المدير عن المشكلة. And then for the preposition li, which we knew that it is actually a prefix that comes in the beginning of words. So this is how we use it for definite nouns which start with alif lam. So for a noun such as the house, which in Arabic is al-bayt, al-bayt, and want to say to the house, so it's li al-bayt, but actually it gets combined, so the li gets combined with al, so it becomes lil. So lil bayt, to the house, lil bayt. And li also is used for many idiomatic expressions. For example, we want to say unfortunately, it's lil asaf, lil asaf. And want to say something like for information, it's lil ilm, lil ilm. And then we want to look into the preposition be, which is also a prefix. So when we look into a definite noun such as the book, al-kitab, al-kitab, and we want to combine it with be, so be al-kitab, be al-kitab, so we just also append it before the alif lam, so it becomes bil-kitab, bil-kitab, with the book. And then we can see that be can also be used to form adverbs. So for example, when we want to have the noun ثقة, ثقة, which means confidence, and want to say confidently, so the way to use it is to say بثقة, بثقة, confidently. And this can also be used in important expressions such as you are talking fast or you speak fast. أنت تتكلم بسرعة. أنت تتكلم بسرعة. Or we can make it like in a form of a request. Please speak slowly. من فضلك تكلم ببطء. من فضلك تكلم ببطء. And notice here that سرعة means speed. So تتكلم بسرعة means with speed. And بطء means slowness. So ببطء means with slowness. And this would mean with speed would mean fast, and with slowness means slowly. Both are adverbs. And then we can also try to have some questions showing the difference between using these prepositions. So when we ask a question such as أين الكلب? أين الكلب? Where is the dog? So the answer can be الكلب في السيارة. الكلب في السيارة. The dog is in the car. So the dog is الكلب and the car is السيارة. So في means in or inside. And in the other situation, the dog is on the car. So we say الكلب على السيارة. الكلب على السيارة. So the dog is on the car. And also want to understand the difference between with when we're talking about person and with when we're talking about object. So we can see it from this example. I am playing with my friends. أنا ألعب مع أصدقائي. أنا ألعب مع أصدقائي. But we want to say I am playing with the ball. أنا ألعب بالكرة. أنا ألعب بالكرة. And then what we see also the difference in using إلى and لي. So sometimes there is no actual difference, it's just we are using them interchangeably. So you want to say I am going to the office and using إلى. أنا أذهب إلى المكتب. أنا أذهب إلى المكتب. And I can also say I'm going to the office. أنا أذهب للمكتب. أنا أذهب للمكتب. That's it. Thank you so much. Hello everyone and welcome to this lesson. Today we'll be talking about the equivalent of verb have in modern standard Arabic. It's important to notice that we don't actually have a verb that corresponds to have, but we have these two words, عند, عند, and لدى, لدى. Both these words are not verbs. They are not conjugated as verbs. Instead, they are classified as something called ظرف مكان, ظرف مكان, or a word that indicates location. So they are more like something when you say with or at. So, for example, when we say I have a car, we don't actually use the word have as a verb, but we say something like with me a car, if this makes it easier to understand. So we will see how to use these two words in expressing the meaning of verb have in English. For the first verb عند, for the first word عند, we find that it has some conjugation, but it's not a verb conjugation. Yet it has the same idea of having different forms in first person, second person, third person, and in singular and plural. We have for first person, we say I have, عندي, عندي. You have for male singular, عندك, عندك. You have for female singular, عندك, عندك. He has, عنده, عنده. She has, عندها, عندها. And then for plural, for we have, عندنا, عندنا. You have for when addressing a group of males or mixed, عندكم, عندكم. You have for addressing a group of females, عندكن, عندكن. When you're addressing two people, you have عندكما, عندكما. They have for a group of male or mixed, عندهم, عندهم. They have for a group of females, عندهن, عندهن. They for dual, عندهما, عندهما. And then for لدى, it has also similar distribution. Say I have, لدي, لدي. You have, لديك, لديك. You have for female singular, لديك, لديك. He has, لديه, لديه. She has, لديها, لديها. And for plural, we have, لدينا, لدينا. You have, when addressing a group of males or mixed, لديكم, لديكم. You have for addressing a group of females, لديكن, لديكن. You have for addressing two people, لديكما, لديكما. They have for a group of males or mixed, لديهم, لديهم. They have for a group of females, لديهن, لديهن. They have for two people, لديهما, لديهما. You can notice for the word لدى that in the conjugations that we have seen, it's all becoming لدي, لديهما, لديكم, لدي. So the rule here is that since لدى ends with ألف لينة, this letter لدى, this ألف لينة is originally ياء, so it's لدي, لدي. And this appears only when a pronoun is attached to the end of it. So لدى, and the pronoun ha, for example, becomes لديه and لديها and so forth. So we can see this in an example like this. For the sentence لدى الجيران كلب. لدى الجيران كلب. The neighbors have a dog. So in this case we see that لدى is not followed by a pronoun, so it becomes normally لدى. However, if it is followed by a pronoun, it becomes لديهم. لديهم. So it becomes الجيران لديهم كلب. الجيران لديهم كلب. And these two sentences mean the same thing. It's just that for this particular structure we can use these different word orders. Let's move to some examples. The verb have and its equivalent in modern standard Arabic, عند and لدى, can be used to indicate that we have some pets. So we can say something like عندي قطة. عندي قطة. I have a cat. هل عندك كلب. هل عندك كلب. Do you have a dog? Addressing a singular male. لدينا سمكة. لدينا سمكة. We have a fish. لديكم ببغاء. لديكم ببغاء. You have a parrot. Addressing a group of males or mixed. عنده سلحفاة. عنده سلحفاة. He has a turtle. لديها حصان. لديها حصان. She has a horse. And we can use it also to indicate some intangible or abstract things. Something like I have a problem. We can say that لدي مشكلة. لدي مشكلة. I have a problem. هل لديك الحل. هل لديك الحل. Do you have the solution. And here we're addressing a female singular. And something like عندنا سؤال. عندنا سؤال. We have a question. هل عندكم الإجابة. هل عندكم الإجابة. Do you have the answer. Addressing a group of males or mixed. لديه اعتراض. لديه اعتراض. He has an objection. عندها معلومات. عندها معلومات. She has information. We can also use the verb have to indicate ownership or owning certain property or things. Like عندي بيت. I have a house. عندي بيت. هل عندك دراجة. هل عندك دراجة. Do you have a bicycle. Addressing a singular male. هل لديكم سيارة. هل لديكم سيارة. Do you have a car. Addressing a group of males or mixed. عندها قارب. عندها قارب. She has a boat. لدينا مزرعة. لدينا مزرعة. We have a farm. عنده شركة. عنده شركة. He has a company. And then we can use it when we're talking about people. We can say something like عندي أخ وأخت. عندي أخ وأخت. I have a brother and a sister. هل لديك إخوة. هل لديك إخوة. هل لديك إخوة. Do you have siblings. Addressing a singular female. هل عندكم أطفال. هل عندكم أطفال. Do you have children. Addressing a group of males or mixed. عندنا أصدقاء من الهند. عندنا أصدقاء من الهند. We have friends from India. عنده صديق من نيجيريا. عنده صديق من نيجيريا. He has a friend from Nigeria. لديها زميلة من باكستان. لديها زميلة من Pakistan. She has a colleague from Pakistan. Notice that we can also use عند and لدى for expressions related to time or to events. So for example, we can say something like عندي محاضرة. عندي محاضرة. I have a lecture. Or something like هل لديك وقت؟ هل لديك وقت؟ Do you have time? Or something like لدينا حفلة. لدينا حفلة. We have a party. هل لديكن اجتماع؟ هل لديكن اجتماع؟ Do you have a meeting when addressing a group of females? Something like عنده مقابلة. عنده مقابلة. He has an interview. Or something like لديها مكالمة. لديها مكالمة. She has a call. We can also use the Arabic equivalent of have to describe illnesses or other bodily conditions. But for some reason, it seems that عند sounds more appropriate. But I don't have really a rule for that. So we can say something like عندي صداع. عندي صداع. I have a headache. Or عندي جرح في ساقي. عندي جرح في ساقي. I have a wound in my leg. Or something like عندي حمى. عندي حمى. I have fever. Or عندي التهاب في الحلق. عندي التهاب في الحلق. I have sore throat. We can say عندي ألم في معدتي. عندي ألم في معدتي. I have pain in my stomach. We can say عندي حساسية من اللبن. عندي حساسية من اللبن. I have milk allergy. In addition to عند and لدى, there is actually a verb called يملك or يمتلك, which is used only in the condition that we possess or own something. So for example, when we say عندي سيارة, meaning that I own a car, so I can either say عندي سيارة, عندي سيارة, I have a car, or I can say أملك سيارة, أملك سيارة, I own a car. Similarly, we can say something like هل لديك بيت؟ هل لديك بيت؟ Do you have a house? Or we can say هل تمتلك بيتا؟ هل تمتلك بيتا? Notice that the noun that comes after the verb has tanween fatha in it, which, if we remember from the lesson about tanween, it's an indication that it is in the object position. So here we can say bayt, and in the object position it's baytan, and here we have sayyara, and in the object position it's sayyaratan. And we can also here have something like هل عندكم مصنع؟ هل عندكم مصنع? Do you have a factory? When addressing a group of males or mixed, we can say something like هل تمتلكون مصنعا؟ هل تمتلكون مصنعا? Notice that this idea about tanween fatha, and because masna here is in object position. Now we have seen a lot of examples, so it's time for you to do some exercise. I think it would be very helpful if you try to form sentences from the examples we have shown earlier. So make up sentence like I have a factory, they have a house, she has a dog, or any combinations from what we have seen before. And make sure to follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and click subscribe and like this video, and also visit our website for a lot of material about learning Arabic. Thank you so much. Hello everyone, let's talk about verbs in Arabic. In Arabic, there are a number of ways to conjugate the verb, you can think of it as a matrix. One side is the tense, so we have three tenses here: past, present, and imperative. And from the other side, you can look at it as the person, which is like the first person, like I, or we, or the second person, which is you, and third person, which is he and she and it and they. And you can also add one dimension, which is the number, so it's either singular or dual or plural. And then another dimension, which is the gender, which is either male or mixed, which is treated the same way, and female. So when you combine all of these together, you'll find that the total number of forms is 31. There are 13 forms in the past, 13 forms in the present, 5 forms in the imperative. And then when we look into the matrix, you can start to find out how many there are for each by person and by number and by gender. So let's see the different forms of verbs in Arabic. Of course, there will be a lot of these, and there are some patterns that you will find, but we will not be going deeply into these. This is just to show you an introduction to verbs, but there will be other courses and materials specifically related to verbs. But for now, let's just see the different forms for each verb that occur in Modern Standard Arabic. So, going into the dimensions that we've talked about, let's first start with the past. So for the third person male in the past, which means something like he wrote, so it's kataba, kataba. And then I want to say for the female, she wrote, katabat, katabat. And for the first person, singular, something like I wrote, katabtu, katabtu. And for addressing individual male, it's katabta, katabta means you wrote. Addressing an individual female, katabti, katabti. And then going to the dual, which means like we're talking about two people. So for the third person, with the past, for the dual, so they, the two of them wrote, it's kataba, kataba. And then for like saying two females wrote, so katabata, katabata. And then when you're addressing two people, whether male or female, it's katabtuma, katabtuma. And then for the plural, for the past, I want to say something like they wrote for a group of males or mixed, so it's katabu, katabu. And for a group of females, katabna, katabna. And for the first person plural, we wrote, it's katabna, katabna. Notice the long vowel that comes at the end, katabna. But in the third person female, it's katabna. So it's a shorter vowel. And then we're addressing a group of males. So saying you wrote, it's katabtum, katabtum. And for the group of females, it's katabtunna, katabtunna. Now moving to the present, so we can say something like he writes, yaktub, yaktub. She writes, taktub, taktub. I write, aktub, aktub. And then for addressing an individual male in the present, you say you write, it's taktub, taktub. For addressing a female, taktubin, taktubin. And now going to the dual, so we want to say they write, the two of them, for males, so it's yaktuban, yaktuban. And then for two females, it's taktuban, taktuban. And also for the present second person, for dual, it's also tektuban, tektuban, whether male or female. And now going to the plural, for the present, we want to say they write, so it's yaktubun, yaktubun. And then we want to say they write, but for females, it's yaktubna, yaktubna. And then we want to say we write, it's naktub, naktub. And then for the second person, we want to say you, males, write, so it's taktubun, taktubun. And for the addressing females, it's taktubna, taktubna. And then moving to the imperative, you want to address a male person and tell him to write, so it's uktub, uktub. And addressing a female, it's uktubi, uktubi. And for the imperative, you want to address two people, whether male or female, so it's uktuba, uktuba. And then also for the imperative, when addressing a group of males, is uktubu, uktubu. And for a group of females is uktubna, uktubna. Now you have seen all of these forms and how they are pronounced, but it will take more coverage and more depth to see the patterns on how to conjugate them. And now we will just look into the verb tenses. So we have the three tenses, which is al-madi, which is the past. And as we have seen, it's something like kataba, kataba, which is more of the default form that when you're talking about the verb, you're usually referring or using this past form in the third person. And for the present, which is al-mudari', al-mudari', it is the other form, which is yaktub, yaktub, and also this is the third person. And for the imperative, which is al-amr, so it would be something like uktub, uktub, which means write. So you see that these are the three main tenses that we are using in Arabic, and the default is the past. And then there's another tense which is not included in the matrix, but it's very easy and straightforward, which is the future. And want to say he will write. So you look into the present form of the verb, which is yaktub, yaktub, he writes, and they want to say he will write. So you just add before it a prefix, which is sa. So sa yaktub, sa yaktub, he will write. Or alternatively, you can use a separate word, which is sawfa, sawfa, so it's sawfa yaktub, which means he will write in the future. And then this is also an interesting starting point for you to look into how these conjugations, how these different forms of the verbs happen. So it all comes down to something that is in part of the Arabic morphology, which is the root of each word. Each word has a root of mainly three letters. So the word kataba, it has the root of the ka, ta, ba sounds and the letters ka, ta, ba. So when you look into the different conjugations, you'll find that it also has the ka and ta and ba, but with different vowels and with different templates. So we want to say I wrote, katabtu, katabtu. So it also has the ka, ta, ba. And then we want to say they write, yaktubun, yaktubun. Also the ka, ta, ba, but with a different template. And then we want to say she writes, taktub, taktub. So again, the three letters are there. And then for the imperative is iktub or uktub. So it's also with the ka, ta, ba. And all of them are derived from the verb root, but with different templates. So this is something, a whole new topic in Arabic morphology, which might be a whole new course on its own. So let's take some examples. So let's ask something like, Adam, what did you write? So ماذا كتبت يا آدم? ماذا كتبت يا آدم? And then asking a female, what did she write? Sarah, what did you write? ماذا كتبت يا سارة? ماذا كتبت يا سارة? Notice here that we're using the word يا, which is a vocative word, which when you're addressing a person or calling to a person, you use it. So يا Adam means addressing Adam, or يا Sarah means addressing Sarah. And then addressing two of them, ماذا كتبتما? ماذا كتبتما? What did you two write? So in this case, we're showing how to use the dual form in the second person. And then we can also use it for the question ماذا كتبتم? ماذا كتبتم? But this will be the second person plural, male or mixed. And when you're addressing a group of females, so we can say something like ماذا كتبتن يا فتيات? ماذا كتبتن يا فتيات? Saying something like, girls, what did you write? Again, we see the usage of يا here, which is the article that we use when you're calling for someone. And then we can have other examples like I wrote a lot, كتبت كثيرا, كتبت كثيرا. And then for using we wrote a little, كتبنا قليلا, كتبنا قليلا. And then you have a sentence like Ali wrote the answer, or Ali wrote the answer, كتب علي الإجابة, كتب علي الإجابة. And then something like Sarah wrote a comment, كتبت سارة تعليقا, كتبت سارة تعليقا. And then something like Farid and Hassan wrote a novel, فريد وحسن كتب رواية, فريد وحسن كتب رواية. And then something like Maha and Sally wrote the homework, مها وسالي كتبتا الواجب, مها وسالي كتبتا الواجب. And then something like most of the students wrote a paragraph, معظم الطلاب كتبوا فقرة, معظم الطلاب كتبوا فقرة. And then something like most of the students, the female students, wrote two paragraphs, معظم الطالبات كتبن فقرتين, معظم الطالبات كتبن فقرتين. And then for the second person and the present, we can say something like you, addressing a male, write with a beautiful handwriting, أنت تكتب بخط جميل, أنت تكتب بخط جميل. And then addressing a female, you write with an excellent style, أنت تكتبين بأسلوب ممتاز, أنت تكتبين بأسلوب ممتاز. And then addressing two people, أنتما تكتبان بوضوح, أنتما تكتبان بوضوح, you two write clearly. And then addressing a group of males, you write fast, أنتم تكتبون بسرعة, أنتم تكتبون بسرعة. And then addressing a group of females, you write well, أنتن تكتبن جيدا, أنتن تكتبن جيدا. And then we can use it also for a question, ماذا تكتبون, ماذا تكتبون? What are you writing? So I can answer, I am writing a story, أنا أكتب قصة, أنا أكتب قصة. Or something like, we are writing articles, نحن نكتب مقالات. نحن نكتب مقالات. Or something like Lara is writing about elections. Lara تكتب عن الانتخابات. Lara تكتب عن الانتخابات. And something like Yasin is writing about technology. ياسين يكتب عن التكنولوجيا. ياسين يكتب عن التكنولوجيا. And then we can ask a question about a group of people, third person. What are they writing? ماذا يكتبون? ماذا يكتبون? So we can say something like Salma and Dina are writing a report. سلمى ودينا تكتبان تقريرا. سلمى ودينا تكتبان تقريرا. And then we can say something like Ahmed and Omar are writing a message. أحمد وعمر يكتبان رسالة. أحمد وعمر يكتبان رسالة. And then a sentence like the rest of the students are writing about law. باقي الطلاب يكتبون عن القانون. باقي الطلاب يكتبون عن القانون. And then something like the rest of the students are writing about science. But here we're talking about female students, so we can say something like باقي الطالبات يكتبن عن العلوم. And then we can use it in the imperative, so say something like write clearly, addressing a male individual. اكتب بوضوح. اكتب بوضوح. And then addressing a female individual, write with details. اكتبي بتفاصيل. اكتبي بتفاصيل. And then addressing two people, اكتبا بسرعة. اكتبا بسرعة. So write fast. And then addressing a group of males, write the answer. اكتبوا الإجابة. اكتبوا الإجابة. And then addressing a group of females, write comments. اكتبنا تعليقات. اكتبنا تعليقات. And that's it for today. Thank you so much. Let's talk about verbs, subjects, and objects in Arabic. Usually in Arabic, the sentence, if it has a verb, it will start with a verb. So for example, if we have a sentence such as the boy saw the movie, then you'll start with the verb saw. So it will be شاهد الولد الفيلم. شاهد الولد الفيلم. So we start with the verb saw, which is شاهد, and then the subject, which is الولد, and then the object, which is الفيلم. When we have a sentence that has a pronoun subject, such as أنا or me, then it will be أنا أكتب كتابا. أنا أكتب كتابا. So you'll find that the subject is in the beginning of the sentence, and then the verb, and then the object. It is also possible, if the subject is also a noun or a noun phrase, to be in the beginning, though there is usually some preference to have the verb in the beginning. And here we notice something in this word kitaban, is that it has this tanween and fatha at the end, which indicates that it is an object. And this is something that we usually see in objects that we have for indefinite nouns and indefinite adjectives. The indication that it is an object by having this an at the end, kitaban. And then let's discuss the verb types in Arabic. So the first type of verb is intransitive verb, like a verb with only a subject and the verb itself but no object. So in Arabic it's called فعل لازم. فعل لازم. For example, the verb win. So when you want to say the team won, we say فاز الفريق. فاز الفريق. And we can even say الفريق, which indicates that this is a subject. Although we don't do this in most of the other parts of the material of this course, but it is important to notice here that when we're talking about subjects and verbs and objects, is to see the indication of the grammatical status of the subject and of the object. The second type of verb that we're covering here is what is known as فعل متعدي. فعل متعدي, which means a transitive verb, a verb with an object. So for example, for the verb explain, if we have a sentence like the teacher explained the lesson, then it will be شرح المعلم الدرس. شرح المعلم الدرس. So you see the sentence starts with the verb شرح, which means explain, and then the subject, which is al-muallim, and then we see the u at the end, indicating that it is a subject. Al-muallimu. شرح al-muallimu. And then the object here is ad-darsa. Ad-darsa. So the lesson here is the object, so it has this a at the end. Ad-darsa. And then we have another special type of verbs, which is the ditransitive verb, like a verb with two objects. So we can find like an obvious example here for the verb give, because you give someone something. So the man gave the boy an apple, so it will be أعطى الرجل الولد تفاحة. أعطى الرجل الولد تفاحة. So you'll find the verb starting the sentence أعطى, which means give, and then the subject here is الرجل, and then the first object is الولد, the one who was given, and then we notice also the a at the end, and then تفاحة. تفاحة. And notice also the an at the end, and since تفاحة ends with تاء مربوطة, so the تاء مربوطة becomes t sound, so instead of تفاحة it becomes تفاحة. So now we see أعطى الرجل الولد تفاحة. And then when we're also talking about subjects and verbs, we find that it is possible to drop the subject if it is a pronoun. So if I want to say I am writing a message, then I can say أنا أكتب رسالة or رسالة, or I can just say أكتب رسالة or رسالة. So this shows that the pronoun here is optional. Or if we want to emphasize something, we can skip the subject pronoun. So if we want to say I saw the accident and I want to confirm or emphasize that I am the one who saw it, or I actually saw it, so I can say أنا رأيت الحادثة. أنا رأيت الحادثة. So I start the sentence with أنا just to give this emphasis. And then we want to see how the grammatical indication of the subject and object changes. So we have here these two similar sentences, but in one of them the boy helped the girl, and the other the girl helped the boy. So let's see the grammatical indication or i'rab of the subject and the object. So in the first sentence, the boy helped the girl, it is ساعد الولد البنت. ساعد الولد البنت. So the boy here has u at the end, الولد, and the girl has a at the end because it's object. البنت. But in the other case, it would be the girl helped the boy. So ساعدت البنت الولد. ساعدت البنت الولد. Now you see البنت takes the U sound and الولد takes the A sound, indicating that U is for subject and A is for object. And then we need to see when do we actually use the A sound and when do we use the N, tanween sound. So it's basically, the criteria is that when the object is definite, like we use alif lam, it becomes A. When it is indefinite, without alif lam, it becomes N. So let's see some examples here. So to say, I met the boy. قابلت الولد. قابلت الولد. So here is just A at the end of the word. If I want to say I met a boy, indefinite, so it is قابلت ولدا. قابلت ولدا. You see here N sound at the end with the tanween here. And then you have something like جاء الرجل. جاء الرجل. It means the man came. So here الرجل is the subject, so it has the U sound at the end. But if you want to say a man came, it would be جاء رجل. جاء رجل. So you have the un sound with the tanween, indicating that this is an indefinite noun with the subject position. And then let's move to something very important, is that we can use an object as a noun or a noun phrase. So I can say قابلت الولد. قابلت الولد. I met the boy. And alternatively we can say I met him. So in this case we will use what we'll call object pronouns, and in this case it is just a suffix that is added to the verb. So it would be I met him, قابلته. قابلته. And let's explore these object pronouns. So we'll find, similar to what we have seen in possessive pronouns, that we have these 12 categories when you have the matrix of first person, second person, third person, singular, dual, and plural. So if you want to say me, like he met me, it's قابلني. Ni. So ni here is the suffix indicating the me object pronoun. If you want to say us, like he met us, it is قابلنا. قابلنا. So na here is the object pronoun. If you want to say he met you, and indicating speaking to a female, so it is قابلك. قابلك. He met you, female. And then he met you, male, it's قابلك. K. So K here is the object pronoun for male, second person. And then for also second person with a dual form, like he met you too, it's قابلكما. قابلكما. So kuma here is the suffix for the dual. And for female plural it is kunna. So it's قابلكن. قابلكن. And for plural male or mixed it's قابلكم. قابلكم. So kum here is the suffix for plural male second person. When we're using third person, so we're saying like he met her, so قابلها. قابلها. And then we want to say he met him, so قابله. قابله. So who here is the suffix for third person singular. And then for the dual, so it's قابلهما. قابلهما. He met the two of them. And then for the plural, female, it's قابلهن. قابلهن. He met them. And for the plural male, it's قابلهم. قابلهم. So this is how we say he met them. And so whom here is the suffix for plural third person. So let's see some examples here. And to say I met him, قابلته. قابلته. And then he met me, قابلني. قابلني. And then we helped them, ساعدناهم. ساعدناهم. And then they helped us, ساعدونا. ساعدونا. And then something like he loves her, يحبها. يحبها. And then she loves him, تحبه. تحبه. And then I have to say I love you, addressing a male, أحبك. أحبك. And then addressing a female, I love you, أحبك. أحبك. And then addressing two people, أحبكما. أحبكما. And then I want to say I love them, the two of them, أحبهما. أحبهما. And then addressing a group of people, males or mixed, أحبكم. أحبكم. And then addressing a group of females, أحبكن. أحبكن. And for object pronouns, they can be attached to any verb for any, like, whether past or present or imperative. So if you want to say in the past, we met them, قابلناهن. قابلناهن. And then for the imperative, if I'm telling a group of people to meet them, قابلوهن. قابلوهن. And then want to say we meet them in the present, نقابلهن. نقابلهن. And then in the future, we will meet them, سنقابلهن. سنقابلهن. And that's it for today. Thank you. Hello everyone, and welcome to our lesson today. Today we are going to talk about what we call in Arabic الأسماء الموصولة. الأسماء الموصولة, which means relative pronouns, or the way we make relative clauses in Arabic. So it's more like how we say in English who or which or that, the man who I saw, or the thing that I did. So these are the different ways we are expressing these al-asma al-mawsula, and they are classified either male or female, and there are singular and dual and plural. For the male singular, we have الذي. الذي. And for female singular, we have التي. التي. And for male dual, where we have two people, اللذان. اللذان. And for two females, we say اللتان. اللتان. And for plural, we have, for males, we have الذين. الذين. And for plural female, it's اللاتي. اللاتي. And you'll see there will be some variants that we will be discussing in the coming slides. So let's see the structure of the sentence with the relative clauses in Arabic. So it always starts with a noun or some sort of a noun phrase, and then you have the relative pronoun, what we call al-ism al-mawsul, or ism mawsul. So this ism mawsul is the relative pronoun that we have seen the different variations of it in the preceding slide. And then you have what we know as jumlat as-sila, jumlat as-sila, which means the relative clause itself, or sometimes they call it silat al-mawsul, silat al-mawsul. So it's the remaining part of the relative clause that comes after the ism mawsul. So let's take an example here. Here we have a sentence that is the boy who sings. الولد الذي يغني. الولد, which means the boy, and الذي, which means who, and يغني, which means sings. So the boy who sings, الولد الذي يغني. Let's see examples for each of the different asma' mawsula, of the different relative pronouns. So for the examples for relative pronouns الذي and التي, the ones for singular, so الذي for male and التي for female, let's take an example here. You can say الولد الذي يغني. الولد الذي يغني, the boy who sings. And for female it will be البنت التي تغني. البنت التي تغني, the girl who sings. However, we notice that when the relative clause that we have includes a verb, and this verb has an object, and actually the name that comes before the relative clause is the object, so we say we bought a chair. So the chair that we bought. So in this case, we need to add an object pronoun after it. So in this case, we can say الكرسي الذي اشتريته. الكرسي الذي اشتريته, the chair that I bought. And here you notice the ha that is part of the object pronoun, which is corresponding to it, that is an object of bought, that in English we don't include, but in Arabic we have to include. Or we can say something like الأغنية التي أحبها. الأغنية التي أحبها, the song that I like. Again, in English we don't say the song that I like it, but we say the song that I like. But in Arabic we have to add the object pronoun after it. أحبها, I like it. So the song that I like. الأغنية التي أحبها. And we can also use الذي and التي and possibly other relative pronouns in question format. So we can say something like من الذي فعل هذا. من الذي فعل هذا, who did this, or who is the one that did this. And we can use also التي, so we can say من التي تغني الأغنية. من التي تغني الأغنية, who is the one that sings the song. Let's see now examples for اللذان and اللتان. اللذان for male dual and اللتان for female dual. So let's see some example here. الرجلان اللذان يمشيان هناك. الرجلان اللذان يمشيان هناك, the two men. الرجلان, اللذان, who, and in this case the dual form of it. يمشيان, the verb walk in dual, third person, and هناك means there or over there. So the two men who are walking over there. And we can also use it for female. So المرأتان اللتان تمشيان هناك. المرأتان, the two women. اللتان, who, in dual form and female form. تمشيان, so this is the verb walk in third person dual female, and هناك means over there or there. And notice something here, there is something also for dual. It's called اللذين and اللتين. اللذين, اللتين, and these are the same as اللذان and اللتان, except that if the relative clause and the noun before it come at a non-subject position, which means it comes in an object position, or it comes after a preposition, or in other situations we use اللذين instead of اللذان, and we use اللتين instead of اللتان. So let's see an example here. We can find a sentence or phrase like الولدان اللذان يغنيان. الولدان, the two boys. اللذان, who in the male and dual form. يغنيان, the verb sing in dual third person male form. So الولدان اللذان يغنيان, the two boys who sing. So this is in a subject position, because we can say الولدان اللذان يغنيان did something. And now when we put it in an object situation, like I met the two boys who sing, so we say قابلت الولدين اللذين يغنيان. قابلت الولدين اللذين يغنيان. I met the two boys who sing. And notice here, instead of الولدان we say الولدين, and instead of اللذان we say اللذين, because the relative clause and the noun before it are in the object position in the second sentence. And we can find it also for female form. We can say البنتان اللتان تغنيان. البنتان اللتان تغنيان, the two girls who sing. Also this is in a subject position, so we say البنتان and اللتان, but in object position we say البنتين and we say اللتين. قابلت البنتين اللتين تغنيان. قابلت البنتين اللتين تغنيان. I met the two girls who sing. Moving on to the plural, we'll find the form الذين. الذين for plural male, and اللاتي. اللاتي for plural female. So let's take an example. الطلاب الذين نجحوا في الامتحان. الطلاب الذين نجحوا في الامتحان, which means the students, the male students who succeeded in the exam. So الطلاب is the students, the male students. الذين, who. نجحوا, succeeded in the past plural third person male form in في, and الامتحان is the exam. And we have the same example for female. So الطالبات اللاتي نجحن في الامتحان. الطالبات اللاتي نجحن في الامتحان, the female students who succeeded in the exam. We can see that there are other variants of the relative pronoun for plural female, because usually the one that is used is اللاتي. اللاتي, but there's also اللواتي. اللواتي, and there's also اللائي. اللائي. So these are the variants of the plural female form. And there are other relative pronouns that we can see, And for example, we have men, and this is also a question word. So let's see an example of it. Something like فاز من يستحق. فاز من يستحق. So man here means the one who. So the sentence would be the one who deserves won. So the person or the one who deserves the winning actually won. So فاز, which means won, and man is our relative pronoun, and يستحق means deserves in third person male singular form. And we have a similar word but for non-humans, so which is ما, and this is also a question word. So we can see an example for it, like هذا ما حدث. هذا ما حدث, which means this is what happened. So هذا means this, and ما it means what, and حدث means happened in past form third person. So هذا ما حدث, this is what happened. And we notice also that the word التي can also be used for plural, but mainly for non-human nouns. So we can say الكتب التي قرأتها. الكتب التي قرأتها, the books that I read. So الكتب is the books, التي means that, and قرأتها means I read, or actually I read them. And remember what we said about object pronoun, when the main name of the relative clause is actually the object of the verb within the relative clause. And we can have something similar like الأفلام التي شاهدناها. الأفلام التي شاهدناها, the films or the movies that. So the films is الأفلام, التي is that, شاهدناها means we watched them. So the movies that we watched them. And notice that all of the examples that we've discussed earlier, the noun that comes before the relative clause, it was always definite. So it was always preceded with ألف لام. الولد, الرجل, المرأة, الطلاب. But here, if we are using a word or a noun without ألف لام, which is known as nakira, which means indefinite, so in this case we don't actually use relative pronoun. So we can say something like ولد يسافر بمفرده. ولد يسافر بمفرده, a boy, which means ولد, يسافر means travels, and بمفرده, which means on his own or alone, a boy who travels alone. And we can find another example for an indefinite noun, but this time for female. So it's like بنت تتكلم الفرنسية. بنت تتكلم الفرنسية, a girl, which means بنت, تتكلم, which means speaks, and الفرنسية, which means French. So a girl who speaks French. And then we have an example for كرسي اشتريناه من السوق. كرسي اشتريناه من السوق, which means a chair that we bought from the market. So in all of these examples we don't say الذي or التي or اللذان or anything. We just don't use the relative pronouns. And here is something for pronunciation, because some of these relative pronouns look very similar to each other. So we can find something like الذين, الذين, which is the plural relative pronoun for the male, And we have اللذين, اللذين, which is the dual but the one in the non-subject position or in the object position. And you find something here, التي, التي, which is the singular female. And then we have اللاتي, اللاتي, which is for plural female. So we have covered the main things that we need to learn about relative pronouns in Arabic. So please follow us on Facebook, and make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and visit our website for more language learning material. Thank you so much. Talking about question words in Arabic. There are a number of question words. The main ones that we'll be talking about today are the ones here. So the first one is hell, hell, which doesn't actually have an equivalent in English, but this is how we form yes-no questions, as we'll see in the coming slides. And then we have أين, أين, which means where. And then we have من, من, which means who. And we also have متى, متى, which means when. And then we have ما, ما, which means what. And we have كيف, كيف, which means how. And we have كم, كم, which means how many or how much. And we have ماذا, ماذا, which means what. Notice that there are two words that mean what here, but we'll see the difference in the examples. And then we have لماذا, لماذا, which means why. So the first one is hell, hell, which forms yes-no questions. So the answer to this question has to be either yes, or in Arabic it's say نعم, نعم, or no, which in Arabic is لا, لا. So for example, we have a question like this: هل نمت جيدا, هل نمت جيدا, did you sleep well? So you can say that نعم نمت جيدا, or لا لم أنم جيدا, but the answer has to start with نعم or لا. And then you have something like هل تريد أن تأكل, هل تريد أن تأكل, do you want to eat? And you have a question like هل أنت مصري, هل أنت مصري, are you Egyptian? And you can have a question like هل وصل الضيوف, هل وصل الضيوف, did the guests arrive? Then we move on to the question word أين, أين, which means where. So you can use it in different ways. You can say something like أين الحقيبة, أين الحقيبة, where is the bag? Or we can say أين تسكن, أين تسكن, where do you live? And you can say something like أين المدير, أين المدير, where is the manager? Or you can say أين أنت, أين أنت, which means where are you? If you're talking to a female, you say أين أنتِ. And if you're talking to a group of people, أين أنتم. So these are some examples of using the question word أين. And then you have the question word من, من, which means who. So let's see some examples. So we can say من هو, من هو, who is he? We can say من هو مخترع الهاتف, من هو مخترع الهاتف, who is the inventor of the phone? Or we can say من هو مؤلف الكتاب, من هو مؤلف الكتاب, who is the author of the book? Or we can have it in a question like this: من قال لك هذا, من قال لك هذا? Who told you so? And then we have the question word متى, which means when. So you can ask the question like متى وصلتم? متى وصلتم? When did you arrive? Like we're talking to a group of people. If you're talking to a single male person, you can say that متى وصلت. If you're talking to a female person, متى وصلتي. And then we have it in a question like this: متى ولدت? متى ولدت? When were you born? We can ask something like متى حدث هذا? متى حدث هذا? When did this happen? Or you can say متى سافروا? متى سافروا? When did they travel? And then you can use ما, which means what, and let's see some examples here. ما معنى هذه الكلمة? ما معنى هذه الكلمة? What is the meaning of this word? We can say something like ما هذا? ما هذا? What is this? We can ask a question like ما هي عاصمة فرنسا? ما هي عاصمة فرنسا? What is the capital of France? We can ask something like ما هي المشكلة? ما هي المشكلة? What is the problem? Notice that what we asking about is the subject of a sentence here. For example, when we ask ما هي عاصمة فرنسا, the answer would be Paris هي عاصمة فرنسا, or Paris is the capital of France. So Paris here is the subject of the sentence, and that's why we use ما. And we'll notice this in a little bit when we see the other word ماذا. And then we have كيف, كيف, which means how. So some examples here like كيف عرفت? كيف عرفت? How did you know? Or كيف حالك? كيف حالك? Which means how are you? And it literally means how is your condition? حالك means your condition. Or we can ask a question like this: كيف نصلح الهاتف? كيف نصلح الهاتف? How do we fix the phone? Or a question like this: كيف يمكن أن أساعدك? كيف يمكن أن أساعدك? How can I help you? And then we have the question word كم, which means how many or how much. So you can make questions like كم عمرك? كم عمرك? How old are you? Which means literally how much or how many is your age. You can ask a question like كم تكلفت الرحلة? كم تكلفت الرحلة? How much did the trip cost? Or you can ask a question like كم شخصا قابلت? كم شخصا قابلت? How many persons or people did you meet? Or you can ask a question like كم تريد? كم تريد? Something like how much do you want? Then we arrive to this question word, which is ماذا, which is also what, similar to what we've seen before for the word ما, but this one is used differently. This one, you can see it in the examples here. ماذا حدث? ماذا حدث? Which means what happened? What happened? Or ماذا فعلوا? ماذا فعلوا? What did they do? You can say also something like ماذا قلت? ماذا قلت? What did you say? Or ماذا تريد? ماذا تريد? What do you want? So you notice that in examples like these is that the thing that we're asking about is the object, because we like ماذا تريد, so we like I want something. So the question is about this thing that we want, so that's why we use ماذا for these examples here. And then we arrive to this question word, which is لماذا. لماذا, which means why. So we can ask a question like لماذا تبكي. لماذا تبكي, why are you crying? Or لماذا تأخروا. لماذا تأخروا, why are they late? Or لماذا وقعت الحادثة. لماذا وقعت الحادثة, why did the accident happen? Or you can say لماذا فعلت ذلك. لماذا فعلت ذلك, why did you do so? So we have covered the main question words in Arabic, and we've seen some examples for them. I would appreciate if you have any questions or comments about the video or things that you want more explanation about. And also please make sure to subscribe and to like the video and to share it with your friends who are learning Arabic or are interested to do so. Thank you so much.